Good evening. Unilever's sustainability statement is a credible, technically strong report. It is well governed, clearly structured, and supported by recognized standards. The key issue is not whether the company is reporting seriously. It is. The key issue is whether the report shows clearly enough how meeting sustainability goals influences business decisions, capital allocation, and long term strategy. Determining this gap is the focus of this review. The current report is strong on disclosure quality, governance, and measurable progress. It is ESRS aligned and externally assured by KPMG, as well as being supported by a formal double materiality assessment. Unilever also reports a 77% reduction in operational emissions and says it collected and processed 111% of the plastic it sold in 2025. The main weakness is that this reporting strength is not yet matched by equally clear strategic change. Unilever's materiality architecture is its clear strength. The report is structured around four priorities: climate, nature, plastics, and livelihoods across six stakeholder groups. Compared with peers such as Nestle and P&G, Unilever appears stronger on disclosure design, particularly through its ESRS based materiality assessment and TCFD linked climate reporting. The main gap is in the evidence base. Unilever states that 99% of emissions sit in Scope 3, yet only 3.2% of Scope 3 emissions are based on primary supplier or value chain data. So, while the framework is strong, the most material area is still supported by limited primary data. Governance is strong at the leadership level. The report identifies six stakeholder groups, shows ESG oversight across four board committees, and links 15% of long term executive pay to the Sustainable Progress Index. The weaker area is deeper in the value chain. Although the report says affected community perspectives are included in the materiality assessment, it also acknowledges that consultations on shared biological resources are not yet complete. For a company with over 46,000 Tier 1 suppliers across more than 140 countries, stakeholder inclusion is recognized, but not yet fully evidenced where exposure is the highest. From a reporting standpoint, this section is broadly strong. The issue is what remains underdeveloped beneath that framework. The gap here is not credibility, it is usability. The report says that 15.6% of capex was taxonomy eligible, but none was taxonomy aligned because the supporting asset level evidence was not in place. That matters because investors increasingly use taxonomy alignment as a signal of green investment quality. So, this is not only a regulatory limitation, it is also a reporting readiness issue. The scorecard shows a clear pattern. Unilever is performing well when it has direct operational control. Operational emissions are down 77%, recycled plastic reached the 25% target, plastic collection and processing reached 111% of plastic sold, and deforestation free sourcing was maintained at 97%. Progress is slower in the areas that depend on broader value chain changes. Scope 3 emissions still represent 99% of total emissions, and regenerative agriculture has only achieved 0.25 million hectares against a 1 million hectare target. So, the strongest execution is in controlled operations, while the harder sustainability challenge remains deeper in the supply chain. This is the most important issue in the report. Unilever clearly recognizes climate and transition risks. The report says that the business strategy is supported by the Climate Transition Action Plan and it discusses transition and physical risks, commodity costs, supply chain disruption, and regulations as input into strategic planning. But despite that, the report also states that no changes were made to strategy or business model in response to the materiality assessment and that no material current financial effects were identified in key year-end financial judgments. That is the central contradiction. If the most material sustainability risks sit in the value chain and are expected to intensify over time, the report needs to show more clearly where those risks are already affecting sourcing choices, resilience investments, portfolio decisions, or financial assumptions. At the moment, the strategy is credible, but the link between materiality and strategic change is still underexplained. The tone of the report is more credible than in many sustainability reports because Unilever does acknowledge real constraints. It is transparent about the limits of Scope 3 data and explains the comparability effects of the ice cream demerger. Where the report needs to go further is in the gaps it acknowledges without fully explaining. Community consultations are described as incomplete without enough detail, and child labor is highlighted in cocoa and vanilla in high risk regions without being elevated as a global salient issue. So the report is strong on progress and controls, but less strong on trade offs and downside disclosures. Five priorities would strengthen the next reporting and execution cycle. First, make sustainability more visible in financial decision making, especially in investor guidance and planning assumptions. Second, improve Scope 3 data quality by setting a clear milestone for increasing primary supplier data. Third, strengthen value chain evidence by formalizing how supplier and affected community perspectives feed into environmental and human rights risk assessments. Fourth, refresh the transition narrative after the ice cream demerger so stakeholders can see a clearer post demerger pathway. Fifth, shift the report from mainly compliance and control towards clearer value creation, showing how sustainability supports resilience, innovation, and long term advantage. Unilever's sustainability statement is highly mature in its disclosure architecture. It is credible, well governed, and supported by real progress in key areas. But the main weakness is also clear. Scope 3 remains the dominant challenge, the underlying primary base data is still limited. Stakeholder evidence is weaker, deeper into the value chain, and the report does not yet show clearly enough how material sustainability issues are reshaping the company's strategy. Unilever already has the architecture to lead. The next step is to make that leadership more strategically explicit by showing not only what matters, but how it is changing decisions, investments, and long term value creation. Thank you for your time. I look forward to your feedback on how these recommendations could strengthen the next phase of Unilever's sustainability reporting and strategy.